Hello guys, today we're going to talk about essential questions in 1.3.3 input devices. This section is a pretty big section, so I'll divide the section into two parts. First, major input devices and sensors explicitly in another video. So I'll describe the major input devices you have to know, and these are scanners, barcodes, QR codes, and how the stock control system works on barcodes, and touchscreens, cameras, keyboards, and finally microphones. So first question is how the 2D and 3D scanners work. For a 2D scanner, the scanner shines a light onto the surface of a document, and the light moves across the document that you want to scan. And when scanning the document, light is reflected, and this reflected light is captured using mirrors and lenses in the scanner. And the captured image is then converted into a digital file, which produce a 2D digital image. For 3D scanners, scanners shine a laser over the surface of a 3D object, not just one side of the document. And it records the measurements of the dimensions of the object, so the different size because it is a 3D object. And that measurements are converted to a digital file, producing a 3D digital model. You see how the function of these scanners are basically the same besides the dimensions? So it just shines light, records measurements of deflected light, and converts that into a digital file. Now just be careful that for 2D scanner, it produces a digital image, and for 3D scanner, it produces a digital model. The next question is about barcodes and QR codes. The actual logic of scanning barcodes and QR codes are also identical, just some points that are needed for each device are different. So to explain how barcode scanner works, an illuminator shines a laser at the barcode, and in the barcodes there are white lines and black lines. So the white lines reflect light more and black lines reflect light less. If you study physics a little bit, you'll learn this in thermal section, but it's just the way it is. So the photoelectric cells capture the difference in reflected light, and that difference, which is the pattern, is then converted to a digital data, and it is sent to microprocessor for further usage. And for a QR code scanner, it is almost identical. Camera is used to scan the QR code, and application on the device containing camera reads the code. And in the code, corners of the code or the large squares are used for orientation of the QR code, and white squares, like the barcodes, there are white squares and black squares in the QR code. And white squares reflect light more and black squares reflect light less. And again, photoelectric cells capture the reflected light, and the pattern or the difference in the reflected light is then converted to a digital data. Interestingly, each pixel is converted to a binary value when the image is captured, and this is in the digital format, and this is how it is sent to the microprocessor. So these are the basic principles of the scanners, but I want you to go further and be able to modify these template answers according to the context given in the question. To illustrate, the question might further ask how is QR code used to check the validity of people in and out of a certain place, or how can it be used to give information? So you have to be flexible, like the first scenario that I mentioned, when it asks you how can it use for verification, or basically a scenario where comparison between stored value and input value must happen. So it is usually a long mark, like 7 marks. And for these questions, you can get points by saying the actual working of QR code, but you need that extra points. You have to approach and attempt to answer how can this be applied. For example, if QR code scan matches valid stored data of QR code, an access is granted for the first scenario of verification. In the other scenario where QR code is used for conveying information, like the QR codes on the product, you can say the QR codes direct the website with information. Now for the application of barcodes, the question usually asks how can barcodes be used in a stock control system, like for example in a supermarket. So this is question type 3. The reason I differentiated with the QR code application is that you cannot get any points for explaining the logic of barcode scanning. All you have to say is an explanation of the stock control system itself. So stock control system has a database of stock, and barcodes identifies each unique product. So when a barcode is scanned, for example, when you're making a purchase, a product is looked up in the database, and the stock for the product are reduced by 1 once that product is identified from the database. And it checks if stock is below a certain level and automatically reorders if it's below a certain level. For example, if the supermarket ran out of tomato because tomato stock become 0, it will automatically place reorder. So this is how the stock control system works based on barcodes. Now we're going to look at touchscreens. Touchscreens are divided into 3 categories: resistive, capacitive, and infrared touchscreens. So starting with resistive touchscreen, it has 2 layers, and when the top layer is touched, the 2 layers make contact. And the 2 layers make contact, the circuit is completed, and the point of contact is determined where the circuit is completed in a certain spot. For capacitive touchscreen, it has a conductive layer, and there's an electrical field along the screen. So sensors are used to monitor the electrical field, and when finger touches the screen, the charge is transferred to the user because it has a conductive layer. And that location of touch is calculated where the charge is transferred. And for infrared touchscreen, there are infrared rays are sent across the screen, and the infrared touchscreen has sensors around the edge, and they form a grid across the screen. So when finger touches the screen, the ray is broken by the finger because it blocks the beam of infrared rays. So the point where the beam is blocked for infrared rays are calculated in an X and Y axis by the sensors around the edge of the infrared touchscreen. So this is how it works on infrared touchscreen, and we just looked at 3 different kinds of touchscreen method. Now I want to move on and talk about the difference between capacitive and resistive touchscreen, that you might get confused because the difference between capacitive touchscreen and resistive touchscreen are asked frequently on the IGCSE paper, like in the checkbox format. So capacitive touchscreens has multi-touch capabilities, while resistive touchscreens don't. And on the other hand, capacitive touchscreens cannot get input of touch when a specific stylus or finger is not used. And so if you use gloves, it wouldn't work basically because glove is not a conductor, so charge is not moved. Whereas resistive touchscreen, there only has to be contact between the 2 layers. And resistive touchscreen is relatively cheaper, and capacitive touchscreens is relatively quicker in response. So as you see, capacitive touchscreens has quicker responses, so it is mainly used in smartphones that we use. But these are the differences that you have to know between the touchscreens, and we'll move on to digital camera. For digital camera, you have to know how image is captured and how the captured image is converted to a digital file. So starting with how image is captured, there is a microprocessor that automatically adjusts the shutter speed, aperture, and the focus. And once the image is captured, the light-sensitive cells capture the photo by the light passing through them. Then the captured image has to be converted to a digital file. So the captured image is converted from analog to digital data using ADC, and it is turned into pixels. And each the captured image are turned into pixels, and each pixel is given a binary value, and that pixels are stored in sequence, and in the file, metadata is also stored. What I mean by metadata is data of data, meaning data of how data is stored, like the dimension and color depth of the image. So the overall file format is stored in file format like JPEG, JPG, and the camera after it was captured in a digital file. So that's it for a digital camera, and we'll move on to keyboards. For keyboards, there are circuit board present at the base of keys, and when a key is pressed, the circuit is completed in that certain location under the key press. And that location of key press is calculated, and after calculation of that key press, An index of character is searched in a computer to find the corresponding key press. So for example, what I mean by this is there is a key with the letter A on it. So if you press that specific A button, the computer will try to find the actual character A on the database. So each character has an ASCII value, which then each has a binary value. And once that data, the binary value is found, after the key is pressed, an interrupt is generated and it is sent to CPU for action of actually displaying the character A because you pressed the key A. So this is how the keyboard works and each key is used. Now finally, we're going to look at microphone. And microphone is used to input sound to a computer. And when a sound is detected, there is something called diaphragm, which looks like a bearing. And so the diaphragm vibrates, which produces an electrical signal. So that signal goes to a sound card and is converted into digital values. And that digital value is stored in computer. So these digital values are the sounds that is input. And the use of microphone is voice recognition. And the voice that is detected are stored as a digital file and is compared with the previously stored digital file. And if those data match each other, the voice is successfully recognized. Now these are the major input devices in 1.3.3 and some kind of uses and characteristics of it. And I hope this video helped you a lot. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and please press like. Thank you.